Well, hello everybody, welcome back to our channel. I'm Nadia from Nadia and Rob. Rob is upstairs working today, and today I'm going to be making us some lunch called chicken Karahi. Now you may be wondering, what am I doing here? Shouldn't I be back in the kitchen? Well, in the last video when we recorded the miso soup with soba noodles, I found that it was difficult for me to actually speak while cooking. It was a little bit tricky. Never mind the mumbling. Mumbling I do no matter what, but actually giving instructions to someone who may be paying attention, the multitasking becomes a little muddled. So I thought that this time might be easier if I get to talking separately from the cooking process. We are making what we call chicken Karahi. Now, you would know it as, if you're an English-speaking person, as chicken Karahi. It's chicken Karahi, and if you'll notice, it's actually tricky for me to say Karahi because I grew up with Kadhai, and I know it's not an easy word to pronounce because of the R bit, or the R bit in the word Kadhai. Karahi, when you pay attention to where your tongue is sitting in comparison to when it hits the upper palate, it's more like the middle of the tongue. It then curls up and hits the top of the palate to make the R sound. Rai, ra is the tip of your tongue hitting the top palate as opposed to the middle of your tongue hitting the top palate. So if you go that motor sound, that is what creating the really deep ra sound. So karai, and it is not an easy sound to make if you're not accustomed to doing it. So if you are curious, you can practice by placing and seeing where your tongue is sitting when you go ra versus ra, karai. So it'd be Kadhai, and the H is more of a silent sound in the word. It's not a he, it's a carry on from ra to e. So Kadhai. That's the sound of the actual word. So we're making chicken Kadhai, and the Kadhai, this is the Kadhai. The vessel is what's called Kadhai. Not so much the dish itself, it's the vessel that it's being cooked in. Now this vessel looks like a wok. This is a smaller version. I will want to eventually get a bigger version, but when I make chicken Kadhai, I can do about 2 thighs, maybe a breast in this one, but nothing more than that. Then I start to run out of space. So it's the shape of a wok, but it's much heavier. It's a much thicker metal, probably iron in this case. Whereas the wok, this is the smaller of the two that we have. It is a carbon steel wok, and it makes a much lighter sound. It's a much lighter material than that. And even though it's in the shape of a wok, it's meant to be that way because it's cooked on high heat on flame. And as we know with a wok, where it transfers the heat all the way up, it does the same thing with the Kadhai. But the Kadhai, because it's a thicker metal, can retain the heat much longer. Whereas the benefit of the wok is you get it hot really fast, you take it off the heat and it cools down quickly. Whereas the Kadhai can maintain the heat for a little bit longer, like a cast iron. There is a confusion with this dish, and I actually found a channel to which I will link the video below. Unfortunately, for English-speaking people, they will not be able to understand, and I don't think there are English subtitles in the video. He's speaking in Urdu, which is a language I know very well. And for Hindi speakers, they can obviously be able to understand what he's saying, but he explains the dish really well. He says a Karahi is a dish where it's more of a frying process, where the sauce is a little on the drier side, as opposed to our traditional curry dishes, which you see in restaurants here, where it's a little bit saucier. Although in restaurants, I find it's too thick of a gravy. When we cook at home, it's more saucy rather than gravy when you're making it. So there's more water added to the dish and rendered down a bit. So when you're cooking a kadhai, you're making it, when you're cooking a kadhai, you're basically making it in a high heat situation where then as the meat is being cooked, if you're doing meat in this case, which we will be cooking chicken, you want to be able to cook the meat to the point where it's tender, fork tender, but it's not falling apart. You want the pieces to stay in their natural form, in their whole form. Whereas when we make a saucy curry, you can let the meat break down a little further, and if it breaks down and goes into the sauce, even better. But you're getting it to that level of tender, or in this case, it's just fork tender, but not falling apart. Kadhai can be different depending on region. So if you go to different areas in Pakistan and in India, and you get a kadhai, they will be more regional based because of the ingredients they may want to introduce or have, but the actual technique is essentially the same. High heat cooking in the kadhai vessel and getting it to a frying point. It impacts a lot of flavor into the dish. It is a very rich flavored dish that you don't necessarily have every day. And you have it with a side of salad, and in our case, our salads are not necessarily dressed, they're just chopped up cucumbers, tomatoes, onions, and you have that with it to kind of not only enhance the richness or enhance the flavor, but maybe tone down the richness a bit. Now, I've been craving kadhai for a while, which is why I've been practicing to make this, and I'm not an expert in any way, but I wanted to share what we were doing, and I feel like this is my best one yet. It's very simple cooking. Let's go over the ingredients in terms of spices. Spices are very simple. It is coriander, cumin, red chili, and salt. Some add black pepper. I actually forgot to add black pepper to this one, but that's okay, I didn't really miss it. Now I added 2 different kinds of chilies. I added, one is a red chili powder, which is ground down from red chilies, and I added what's called a Kashmiri chili powder. Kashmiri chili powder is not as hot or spicy as a red chili powder, but it is a lot more red in color, and it actually imparts a lot of red color into the dish. A traditional tandoori chicken would be made with a Kashmiri chili powder, to give it that red-orange color. Nowadays, when you see tandoori chicken, more than likely some red coloring has been added to actually saturate the color even further. But traditional tandoori chicken, just the Kashmiri chili powder, and probably red chili powder as well. Now for cumin and coriander, you can use whole ones if you want and grind them down, which I do sometimes. But today I'm feeling a bit lazy, so I'm replacing the whole seeds with already pre-ground seeds, which you can do if you have them. The flavor will be a lot more fragrant if you use the whole seed ones, but sometimes you just want to use the powder one for convenience, and that's totally fine. Maybe next time when I'm just cooking something a bit smaller, I'll use a small kadhai and I can show you guys how we go about using it. But today will be the wok, so let's get started. Just using the spoon to remove the skin off the ginger. Normally I don't mind using the skin, but in this case I just want to make sure it does not leave any bitterness behind. It's easier to use a spoon because then you have less ginger coming off, if that makes any sense. No need to waste good ginger. Ginger and garlic is very important in this dish as it actually makes a very distinct flavor profile for when you're frying this particular dish up. So we want to make sure we get a nice amount, and we are actually going to be grating them and making it into a paste-like consistency. What's nice about this dish is that it doesn't actually require a lot of ingredients, but it does take a bit of time as you want to be able to cook the chicken through, not just to make sure that it's cooked through, but to have it tenderize. If you have any leftovers in the kitchen, like tomatoes like we do, that are going somewhat bad, this is a great dish to use it in as it stews along with it. Hi, Rob.
Hey there, I'll be back later. I'm looking forward to this. This is really good.
Oops. Yeah. Come on. Of course, you want to make sure you don't lose any skin or nails while you're doing this. Okay. That's your ginger garlic paste. Now you can use just whole ginger and whole garlic if you want, or just chop it up, but for what's recommended, and I can see why, is because you want it to fry and build on the flavor. And when you fry it with the chicken, there is a very distinct smell that comes out. And that's what defines the initial flavor base of this dish. So grate your ginger and garlic, you will thank me. Also, then you don't get chunks of ginger and garlic as you're taking bites out of the dish. Next, let's prepare the chicken. Again, I was able to find this chicken boneless and skinless. We don't like to use the skin so much because it doesn't really crisp up in the dish. It just kind of turns kind of gelatinous and soft. But the reason I like to go to a butcher counter or butcher is because I can then just choose the amount that I want. And as well, I don't mind cleaning the chicken myself. It's cheaper to buy with skin and bone and just clean it when you're home. If you're comfortable doing that, it's actually not difficult to debone a thigh. You just take your knife and run it along the bone, and then just, you can see it slice away from it. And I like to cut out the veins. This is something that I learned from my mother, which I kind of like doing. Ah, these have bone in them. We have a very specific knife for boning. We have a boning knife, which we love to use. So let's just see that the initial cut starts to expose the bone, and you can start to then separate the bone from the chicken. And I try to leave as little meat behind as possible. There you go. Okay, so all the chicken is cleaned and cut. Not the most beautiful cutting job, but once you start cooking it, it won't really matter. Let's just put this aside for now. Okay. Now, I do want to say that I'm actually not an expert in cooking this dish. I'm still learning, and I try to find excuses to make it so I can become more comfortable with the technique. And it's all about not just the technique, but it's smelling. When you smell something frying and you can smell the change in it, that's when you know you need to go to the next step. And visual as well. The recipe's kind of odd because there is no real recipe. It's just learning from someone visually while they're doing it. And I kind of like to learn that way because I'm a very visual person. In some regions, they use either onions or tomatoes or both. I want to use it both because I have some onion left over in the fridge, and we're going to fry up the chicken and the onions together. Go. This is a dish that cooks at high heat, but I find with a wok you have to be a little more cautious, especially because our stove is actually quite powerful. While that's frying up, I'm just gonna get some green chilies that I keep in the freezer. Just gonna get 2 so it's not too spicy. And just gonna use 2. And I like to use it in the beginning part of the cooking. 1, it lends a piquant flavor when it's frying, and 2, the level of spiciness or heat reduces as it's cooking. Good. And you want to be careful with the wok, because I find it can burn quite quickly, and you don't want that because then it has a very sandy, gritty texture. Okay. Tomatoes. Now, some water. Just going to cover and let it sit. Now, the reason I cut the tomatoes the way that I did and just put them in halves is because it makes it easier to peel the skin once the tomatoes soften. This is one of my favorite dishes, and I've had a hard time finding like this type of dish here in Toronto and all the Indian restaurants that we've been to. It's hard to go to an Indian restaurant when I have a mother who's an amazing cook when it comes to these dishes. So I decided I would try to make it myself, and I've been watching tons of videos that are from India and Pakistan to get an idea of how they make it, and lots of practice. And it's all about your senses, your visual, your sense of smell, and getting the technique down. There is no real recipe. It's just understanding how everything comes together. Okay, now that the tomatoes are broken down quite a bit, we're going to add our coriander powder, cumin powder, our red chili powder, and a bit of Kashmiri chili powder. The Kashmiri chili will lend more of the color, bright red. It's not very spicy. I normally like to put a lot more chili powder on there, but today we're trying to temper the heat a bit, give it flavor, but not kill your taste buds. Now, once we start stirring, you're going to see how bright red the Kashmiri chili powder makes it. Don't worry about the seasoning coming off the wok. We're going to re-season it afterwards. Now, here's the crucial point. And this is the part where a lot of people will cringe. Now, I know people are going to be like, that's a lot of oil. I'm adding that ghee at this point because you want that oil to be starting to fry everything further. You want everything to start coming together, and adding that ghee or oil at that stage will bring everything together. If you're afraid of having too much oil in the dish, then just skim it off in the end and save that oil. You can use that oil for anything else that you make in the future as your base, because that oil is infused with flavor. Trust me, you'll thank me. As you see that oil fry and you can see it take on the color of the Kashmiri chili, that is also indicating flavor. Now, when you start to see the oil separate, but you don't see any pools of water, that means your gravy is done. You just want to check the meat. If the meat still hasn't tenderized enough, you can add a bit of water, cover it, and let it cook further. Once the meat has tenderized and there's no more water that can be seen and the gravy is cooked down further and the oil is just pooling a little bit on top, you know it's done. Now what we are going to do is actually just chop up some coriander, and when it's done we're just going to sprinkle on some garam masala and some chopped coriander and just let it sit for a bit. Let all the flavors get married in there. This gives the aroma into the dish because it has a multitude of spices in here all ground up. And then the pièce de résistance, some coriander. I like a lot of coriander, but you don't have to put that much on if you don't want to. We're gonna have it with some pita bread that I just keep frozen in the freezer. We call this khubus. And you don't always have to have it with a roti or roti. You can have it with rice, khubus, or sometimes what I like to do is just eat it with a spoon when it's really that good. This is my best one yet. Chicken is tender.
Smells good. Very tasty. Not spicy. At least not yet.
No, I made sure not to keep it that spicy for you.
Thank you.
That's why if you cook the green chilies in the beginning of the cooking process, it gets milder as it's cooking up. Good, right? That's your computer. Chicken's tender.
It's very good.
This is my lunch. It's best to have tomatoes in season because they do lend a lot of flavor. But you can also do what I do is I get Roma tomatoes when they're not in season and just let them sit on the counter almost to the point where they're starting to kind of rot. But you don't want it to rot. That's when it becomes sweeter and use it then.
And this does warm up on you over time.
I like it. We're all out of yogurt, so Rob can't have any more. He's feeling better though. Do you want to let them know
What?
that you're feeling better?
Yes. First of all, I'm upright, which is good.
Yeah.
And definitely feeling a lot better. So things are healing.
Things are healing, things are mending, and soon you can start having these dishes with me. Hopefully. If you're worried again about the oil, think of what you guys are eating when you're eating butter chicken. Have you seen butter chicken? Not the traditional way, or you would make with cashew, raw cashew. The amount of butter and cream that gets added, and in some cases sugar. Who adds sugar in a curry dish? So this oil compared to what you're getting in a butter chicken, completely separate occasion. But again, save the oil or get rid of it if you want. But if you can see here, there isn't much oil present in the dish as it's now become part of the gravy and part of flavor, which is what makes a dish really, really delicious. Thank you for watching. hope you enjoyed the video. We'll be doing more stuff like this. I am personally enjoying just making something for lunch or dinner and just sharing it with you guys, because sometimes those are the best cooking times as opposed to reading a recipe or planning out a recipe. If you would like to see a recipe video of this being shot the way we do all of our other recipe videos, let us know and we'll put something together. We always love to do that, and we always love to share it with you guys. So thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell. The like does make a difference in the algorithm, and it'll help push our videos out to others so other people will view it as well. So we really appreciate your support. And we'll see you next time. Chicken is tender.
Smells good. Very tasty. Not spicy. At least not yet.
No, I made sure not to eat that spicy.